overview, a little introduction to the whole of the retreat. So really what we're going to be exploring the whole of this week is an approach to practice that is primarily about surrender, about self-surrender, a faith-based approach, devotional, just entrusting that actually, you sort of have to go as if, it's as if that there is a power in the universe, or just like built into the nature of conditionality. There are currents in that are trying to help us get enlightened. It's like it's almost like, enlightenment is just being sort of blocked. But when we are actually able to let go of the selfing mind, we can trust that there is a sort of natural potential in us that is trying to grow, and that can take us all the way to enlightenment. And that manifests as experience of other power. So we're just going to be exploring loads of different aspects of this. And I must say, when I first came along, and I went, I think it was something that Ratnaguna did in Sheffield, actually. And it was about the Pure Land Sutras. And I was sitting there and I was listening to him, like, talking about the Pure Land Sutras and Buddhism of devotion and all that. And what my rational mind was doing is I was sitting there and going, what a load of rubbish. I mean, honestly, how can any grown person take this seriously? They're all living in cloud cuckoo land. This is what my rational mind was doing. And then he just went on and on talking, and he started reading parts of the Pure Land Sutras. And I just found myself crying. And at the end of the session, it's like, I was just completely shaken to the depths of my being. And in fact, I could hardly stand up. I just was like staggering around all over the place. And I realized that actually there was something my rational mind was telling me, and there was something that the whole rest of my being was telling me. And I wasn't very well able to listen to what my heart and my guts were telling me about the nature of practice. And so you could say that that's a thread that I've been following ever since. And I would imagine anyone who's chosen to book on this retreat, you must either have quite a strong interest in developing this area, or already quite a strong practice around that, or non-practice, however you want to see it. Yes. So we're going to be primarily looking at this text, the Tanisho, Lamenting the Deviations, slightly odd title. And it's not actually written by Shinran. It's a record of his oral teachings. So it's like the Japanese equivalent of "Thus have I heard." So it's actually written down by one of his disciples, Wienbo. So we're primarily going to be looking at that. We're also going to be looking at the framework of the 3 myths of the spiritual life. We're going to be looking at bits of the Pali Canon, bits of Bhante Sangharakshita, bits of the Mahayana. So here's a nice quote from Bhante. He talks quite a lot about Pure Land and devotional Buddhism in the survey, actually. It's the 3rd chapter, the one nobody ever gets onto. So he says, Shinran's interpretation, being essentially a reading of the original Amitabha myth in the light of the loftiest transcendental conceptions, is not to be understood apart from the earlier traditions, out of which it sprang as naturally as a flower from its parent seed. So we're going to be looking at Shinran and this, Japanese flowering of devotional Buddhism. And we're going to be seeing, well, how does that relate to what we know? How does that relate to metta, bodhicitta, going for refuge, the system of spiritual practice, etc. And I would really invite you, as far as possible, to enter a magical world. Now, if we were physically all in a retreat centre together, I'd be inviting you all to make shrines all over the place, on the windowsill, in the dining room and in the kitchen and in the toilets and all the rest of it. And obviously, we're not all in the same space, but I'd really invite you to do something in your homes. Certainly make your shrine as exciting and beautiful as you can, and maybe make multiple shrines. I was thinking it could be that every single room you inhabit could have a micro shrine. It could be like a secret shrine, particularly if you're sharing your space with other people. It could just be like a tiny Buddha, or just like a little word blue tacked on the back of a door, or, but try to have something as a reminder of the Buddha in every single space in your home that you're going to be inhabiting. Yes, hopefully we'll hear in the groups how that goes. So Shinran is describing a Dharma life entirely based on faith in other power and letting go of self-power. And this is such a radical shift of emphasis. Pretty much all of how we think about enlightenment is us doing practices, us making choices, us using our minds, us doing things that mean at some point in the future we're going to become enlightened, and we're going to sort of gradually change ourselves. And it requires a real revolution in how we think about practice to move into a sort of letting go approach. So Shinran calls this the turning of mind, the turning of mind. But amongst the many things that I love about Shinran, he's actually very, very practical. So he's talking about those who live the Nembutsu, those who live mindfulness of the Buddha. So it's very much about our daily life, the ordinary things. When does the Buddha come to mind? When does our practice come to mind? And really noticing and valuing those moments. And again, we'll be exploring this more. So I think this sort of approach, it's a marvellous antidote to all sorts of stuckness that, one can get into. There's, all sorts of stuckness one can get into in any approach, but it's... something else that I love is it's very, very clear. So as you read the Tanasho, I don't know if you've already read the study for the sessions, Shinran, he's expressing this sort of heart response, like, I'm just going to rely on the compassionate vow of Amida. But then he says, well, the reason is, well, when I reflect on this, or, so he's got this kind of intelligence where he's very clear and he's thinking it through, and he thinks, well, when I take this approach, this happens and this happens and this happens. So that's what I'm going to do. Whereas if I take that approach, that happens and that's not so good. So he's got this combination of clarity and total heart devotion, which I find very, very appealing. Very, very appealing. Yeah. And there are points at which Shinran sounds like he's taken the Dharma as we know it and he's thrown it in the dustbin, like possibly particularly parts about ethics. So if anybody goes away from this retreat saying, Maitrisiddhi says, I shouldn't make any positive choices and I shouldn't practice ethics and the precepts don't matter. Like, can I just say, like, if anyone thinks that, can you just like, that won't be where we're going, okay? That's completely not where we're going. We're coming at it from a different point of view. Ratnaguna obviously has been very interested in this area, and in one of his talks he says, oh, I'm not even sure if Shinran is Buddhist. Now, I'm definitely sure that Shinran is Buddhist, and we're going to be exploring this. But actually, this is why I wanted everyone to be an experienced practitioner, already grounded in right view. Because I do think it's very easy to misunderstand Pure Land teachings. And actually, if you look at the history of the Pure Land movement, this has happened again and again. You know, it's really obvious. So, but I'm trusting that you are all well grounded in right view. So I've got a couple of debts that I just wanted to acknowledge. So probably firstly to Ratnaguna, both for introducing me to Shinran and the Pure Land Sutras, and also just like a whole variety of talks he's done over the years. Also for Danya, actually, at the Sheffield Centre, you know, when I was a very new practitioner, he just ran loads of weekends on faith-based stuff. And my third debt is a connection that I've made, which I'm very happy about, with Enrique Galvan Alvarez, the Reverend Enrique Galvan Alvarez, and he's ordained in the Jodo Shinshu, which is Shinran's movement, and he's just been immensely helpful. He's been answering my questions, he's been lending me books. You know, I email him at 9 o'clock at night and he shoots back a really long response all about Japanese kanji characters, and I'm like, wow. So so I just wanted to acknowledge my debts. Yes. And probably just finally, there's some really strong parallels with Shinran's approach and Bhante's approach. And you might feel that they were very, very different, but actually there's a lot of parallel, and perhaps particularly with, Bhante saying, going for refuge is the central act of the Buddhist life. That is what makes a Buddhist a Buddhist. The fact that we go for refuge to the Buddha's enlightenment, to the teaching, and to the Sangha, enlightening beings. And that act of going for refuge is what makes us Buddhist. And the Pure Land tradition is a refuge tradition. It is a tradition where taking refuge is the central act, and in fact the only act. And this is what Shinran pulls out. This relationship between entrusting and going for refuge. You know, it's like you go for refuge to what is truly worthy of trust. And that can be the soul practice. That can take us all the way. Yeah. Okay. So I think what we're going to do now is move into puja and meditation. So if you want to get yourselves into whatever mode. And what we'll do first is salute the shrine. And we'll do it in call and response. And because I've got my tech team in here, they can do the response. So I invite you all to join us. Namo Buddhaya. Namo Buddhaya. Namo Dhammaya. Namo Dhammaya. Namo Sanghaya. Namo Sanghaya. Namo Namah. Namo Namah. home.
home.
So we're going to dedicate this retreat ritually by saying the Avatamsaka Sutra in call and response, verses of refuge. Then we'll chant the refuges and precepts together in unison. And we've got a recording of the Taraloka community chanting the refuges and precepts, so which hopefully will give us more of a sense of like us collectively, us as a retreat sangha chanting the refuges and precepts. And then we're going to hear the roots of the Pure Land tradition. So we're going to have Annabeth reading Pingir's praises of the way to the beyond from the Pali Canon. Then we're going to chant the Shakyamuni mantra. And then we're just going to sit and allow all of ourselves to come into this space. Puja to dedicate True Entrusting retreat. Avatamsaka Sutra. I take my refuge in the Buddha.
I take my refuge in the Buddha.
And pray that with all beings.
And pray that with all beings.
I may understand the great way.
I may understand the great way.
Whereby the Buddha seed.
Whereby the Buddha seed.
May forever thrive.
May forever thrive.
I take my refuge in the Dharma.
I take my refuge in the Dharma.
And pray that with all beings.
And pray that with all beings.
I may enter deeply into.
I may enter deeply into.
The Sutra treasure.
The Sutra treasure.
Whereby our wisdom may grow.
Whereby our wisdom may grow.
As vast as the ocean.
As vast as the ocean.
I take my refuge in the Sangha.
I take my refuge in the Sangha.
And pray that with all beings.
And pray that with all beings.
I may reign in great multitudes.
I may reign in great multitudes.
And have nothing to check.
And have nothing to check.
The unimpeded progress of truth.
The unimpeded progress of truth.
Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo
saranam gacchami. Dhammang saranam gacchami. Sanghang saranam gacchami. Dutiyampi buddhang saranam gacchami. Dutiyampi dhammang saranam gacchami. Dutiyampi sanghang saranam gacchami. Tatyampi buddhang saranam gacchami. Tatyampi dhammang saranam gacchami. Tatyampi sanghang saranam gacchami. Panatipata veramani sekapadam samadhyami. Adinadana veramani sekapadam samadhyami. Kamesu mechachara veramani sekapadam samadhyami. Musavada veramani sekapadam samadhyami. Surameya Maja Pamadatana veramani sekapadam samadhyami. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. With deeds of loving kindness, I purify my body. With open-handed generosity, I purify my body. With stillness, simplicity, and contentment, I purify my body. With truthful communication, I purify my speech. With mindfulness clear and radiant, I purify my mind.
Pingia's praises of the way to the beyond. I will sing you the praises of the way to the beyond, said Pingia, when he returned to where the Brahmin Bavari lives on the banks of the river Godhavari. It was described to us by this man exactly as he saw it. But then, there isn't any reason why a man like him should lie. A mammoth of knowledge and completely pure. A man without desire. When a voice has none of the glibness of pride, none of the ingrained stains of ignorance, then its words are full of sweetness and beauty. It is such words that I praise now. They call him Buddha, enlightened, awake, dissolving darkness with total vision, and knowing the world to its ends. He has gone beyond all states of being and of becoming. He has no inner poison drives. He is the total elimination of suffering. This man, Brahmin Bavari, is the man I follow. It is like a bird that leaves the bushes of the scrubland and flies to the fruit trees of the forest. I too have left the bleary half-light of opinions. Like a swan, I have found a great lake. Up till now, before I heard Gautama's teaching, people had always told me this. This is how it has always been, and this is how it will always be. Only the constant refrain of tradition, a breeding ground for speculation. This prince, this beam of light, Gautama, was the only one who dissolved the darkness. This man, Gautama, is a universe of wisdom and a world of understanding. A teacher whose dharma is the way things are, instant, immediate, visible all around, eroding desire without harmful side effects, with nothing else quite like it anywhere in the world. But Pingia, said Bavari, why then don't you spend all your time, your every moment with this man Gautama, this universe of wisdom, this world of understanding, this teacher whose dharma is the way things are, instant, immediate, visible all around, eroding desire with no harmful side effects, with nothing else quite like it anywhere in the world? Brahmin, sir, said Pingia, there is no moment for me, however small, that is spent away from Gautama, from this universe of wisdom, this world of understanding, this teacher whose teaching is the way things are, instant, immediate, and visible all around, eroding desire without harmful side effects, with nothing else quite like it anywhere in the world. You see, sir, said Pingia, with constant and careful vigilance, it is possible for me to see him with my mind as clearly as with my eyes, in night as well as day. And since I spend my nights revering him, there is not, to my mind, a single moment spent away from him. I cannot now move away from the teaching of Gautama. The powers of confidence and of joy, of intellect and awareness hold me there. Whichever way this universe of wisdom goes, it draws me with it. Physically, I cannot move like that. My body is decaying, I am old and weak. But the driving power of purposeful thought propels me with it without break. There was a time when, writhing in the mud of the swamps, I could only drift from one stone to the next. But then I saw the Sambuddha, fully awake and free from defilement. Then the Buddha spoke. Pingia, he said, other people have freed themselves by the power of confidence. Vakali, Bhadravuda, and Alavgotama have all done this. You too should let that strength release you. You too will go to the further shore, beyond the draw of death. These words, said Pingia, are the words of a man of wisdom. As I hear them, I become more confident. This man is Sambuddha. He has opened the curtains and woken up. There is nothing barren there. His mind is clear and luminous. Everything accessible to knowledge is known to him, even the ultimate subtleties of Godhood. There are no more questions for the doubtful who come to him. The teacher has answered them all. Yes, I shall go there. I shall go beyond change. I shall go beyond formations. I shall go beyond comparison. There are no more doubts. You may consider this as mind released.
Shakyamuni Swami.
So we'll have an open sit for 15 minutes. And in the Pure Land tradition, Amitabha says, "Come as you are. Come as you are." So simply allowing all of ourselves to be present, whatever we have going on. So we'll move into a 15-minute break, and I'll see you back here at 11:45.